Just a quick disclosure to share in conjunction with this podcast. Each of us are speaking to our personal experiences and do not consider ourselves experts and cannot offer medical, therapy, financial, or legal advice. We represent a wide range of experience on the autism spectrum and will always honor each perspective that is brought to our discussions. Our experiences, opinions, and perspectives are all unique and different and will be celebrated. Thank you so much for listening and connecting with us. Thank you. Hello, welcome to Navigating Adult Autism, Season 2. And we are kicking off Season 2 with our guest, Temple Grandin, and we are thrilled and honored to have her here today. As we've always said, we are 7 moms with a lot of perspectives, a lot of experience, and a lot of opinions. So Temple, we are here and we are so excited. We've been fans of you forever and have seen you in person and read your books. And we are so excited that you're here. We can't thank you enough for being here. So thank you. And do you want to start out to our listeners that may not be familiar with your work? Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself to start things off?
Well, I'm in my 70s now, but I had no speech until I was 4 years old. I mean, I had all the severe autistic symptoms as a very young child. I was very lucky to get into a very good speech therapy education program. I had a lot of great teachers. I am now a professor of animal science at Colorado State University, and I've been a professor there for 34 years. Wow. And so that's what I'm doing now. And I want to help autistic adults to sort of be everything that they can be. And I've talked to a lot of grandfathers that come up to me, grandmothers, and they find out they're autistic when the kids get diagnosed. But a lot of these granddads had good jobs, like a pharmacist or a computer programmer, because they learned working skills very early. They had paper routes as kids. And we ideally, with the, kids, growing up right now, I'd like to start teaching those working skills when they're 11 years old with paper route substitutes, where they might walk a dog for the next door neighbor. It needs to be working for somebody outside the family. Because one of the big problems I'm seeing with the teenagers is the parents can't let go. They get locked into the label, and the kids aren't learning grocery shopping, just going into a store and learning how to talk to store staff.
I agree. I agree. So So when you speak at conferences and to other parents, that is what you talk about is employment mainly, or is that?
Well, that's one of my biggest things I talk about. I also talk a lot about sensory issues and how to deal with them. And what I have found is that the same issues keep coming up, also working memory issues. And a very simple accommodation would save a lot of jobs. And I'm going to call it a pilot's checklist. So if you're going to do a job where there's a sequence, if someone just tells you how to log out of a cash register or how to start it up in the morning, I don't remember the sequence. I need to write it down so I have an external working memory. Just the other day, I was in my student's thesis defense, and the other faculty wanted some revisions in the paper. I said, I want to write down a checklist of each revision so we can make sure that she does it.
Right.
Even on that, I'm kind of using a checklist. But that's something that would save so many jobs because the boss gets mad and says, well, I just showed him how to run that machine. Is he stupid? Well, if you'd written down the steps, then that would have saved that job. And then, sensory issues with clothing. An autistic man lost a job with UPS, the delivery company, because a uniform itched. Well, maybe all he needed to do was wash it 3 times. I have pants that I buy at Walmart, and they have to be washed 3 times before they're good enough for a long plane ride.
Okay.
That's something that that's an easy thing to do.
Right.
You lost the job because you didn't wash the uniform a couple of times.
Oh, gosh. Yes.
Yeah. You see, I want to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen. And I was on a podcast just the other day, and I said, well, you got some good life hacks. But these are things that come up over and over and over again.
Right.
Problems with LED lights that flicker.
Yes.
I don't have a problem with that, but other people do. So what do I do if I'm stuck in an office with that? Well, I go out and buy an LED light that I really like, put it in a lamp, and put it on my desk.
Right. Right.
All right. You see, that's just a simple thing that you could do.
Yeah, and I think employment is a big issue. We covered that topic a little bit on one of our podcasts. We're going to do another one on employment. But yeah, those little things. We had a boy with autism that didn't like, did the person smoke, I think, that sat next to him? But all these sensory issues do play a big part in employment. And I think with my own son, they actually did have to make a list for him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always been a list maker.
Well, the pilot's checklists, let's say if someone doesn't want to disclose, you can just say pilots need a checklist, I need one too. And they have to use it for every single flight. Pilots are required every single flight to do checklists.
Right. So then
it's not optional for pilots. It's not optional.
Right.
So somebody thinks that's stupid, you can remind employers about that.
That's a good analogy. I like that. Mm-hmm. And we came across that 70% of people with disabilities are not employed. I don't know if you've heard that statistic or not. But.
Yes, I have. And then what frustrates me, I spent 25 years in heavy construction supervising people putting in equipment I had designed. And I worked with metalworking shops that they were undiagnosed autistic, dyslexic, ADHD. They had 20 patents each, and they were owning and running the shop. This is one of the things that makes me really get bothered when I go back and forth between the worlds.
Right. About with autistic people that are working, you're saying that the problems
The problem is, I've seen smart autistic kids that are teenagers doing super well in school. They've never gone shopping by themselves. They've never done laundry.
Yes, that's very
true. They haven't been caught a bank account.
And I think that's Temple, that's Kara. I think that's a parent should get in there and start training our kids because we know that they're going to need some additional support. So start them early.
Well, that's just it. And I've talked to moms when I suggested the next time she's at a gas station to give her kid a $5 bill while she's pumping the gas and go and buy something in the store.
Right.
I had a mom says, I don't know if I have the guts to do that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh.
Talking tiny baby steps here.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I remember when my daughter was in therapy, we were working on life skills, and the therapist, Dr. Grant, had suggested give her a list of items to go into the store. You do not go in with her. You stay out in the car and give her the list, and you can possibly walk her through on where to find these items and then see how she does. And I'm like, maybe I was so nervous.
In the store where the cereal
is. Yes. Yeah. And that is, I know that was going to be something very difficult for her to approach somebody. And so I gave her the list. I walked her through on where to find the 2 or 3 items. And I was so nervous sitting in the car. And actually, I think I called a friend and said, oh my goodness, you can't believe what I just did. And I was so nervous. I waited about 15 minutes later. She came out. She had every single item. And then she told me that she had to ask somebody. And I said, you asked somebody? Yes, Mom. And she did. And she came back with all 3 items. And I was very impressed. So I think we don't always know what our kids can do because we get nervous and scared as parents. But by pushing them, we're able to find out what they can really do.
I'd rather say stretching because I don't want to push it.
That's a good word.
Don't throw them in the deep end of the pool. Yeah. This was going in the store probably when it wasn't super busy. I'll tell you something you don't do. Chuck a 17-year-old girl into a chaotic clothing store at Christmas time.
Yeah,
that did not work.
That's right.
I want to avoid the takeout windows and the really chaotic multitasking stuff. We need to avoid those jobs. Okay. But there's plenty of other jobs.
Yes, there's plenty of jobs. Okay, Elizabeth has a question.
So do you? I love how you said getting locked in the label. Do you think over the years, the more information we've gotten, we've been flooded with all these great things we can do. Do you think sometimes that some parents into overload and they're so focused on that label that they're forgetting some of these basic things that you're teaching us and telling us, or has it just always been that way that once we get that diagnosis?
No, I think it's gotten worse because when I talk to the autistic adults that have been successful at work, getting diagnosed later in life has been very helpful for their relationships. And you might be interested in a book that I have that's called Different Not Less. And Different Not Less is 18 adults diagnosed later in life. They all had jobs. They were all gainfully employed. And where it really made a difference for them was with their relationships. But I think on some of these other, fully verbal autistics, they teenagers and stuff, I think the label's holding them back.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Dawn?
Yeah.
This is Dawn.
This is Dawn. So those people who are able to get a diagnosis later in life, they are going to be at the higher end of the spectrum.
They were all at the higher end.
Right.
They had jobs ranging from tour guide at a museum, computer programmer, veterinarian, doctor. Then some had attendant at a nursing home. That was another one.
Okay.
But they were all gainfully employed.
So I described my son as being in the middle of the spectrum.
Yeah.
He was not able to sail through masking or passing for neurotypical. It was pretty obvious that something was wrong. So he got a label early on. So now that he is an adult, I know that you have written in one of your books, I just recently read Navigating Autism, not to lead with the label.
Well, the thing is, you've got to look at what he can do, and a lot of times they can do a lot more things than what you think they can do.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. But now I'm worried about, he goes into Walmart where he's employed now, and I've had people come, supervisors, they're worried that he's talking to himself. And, in autism, we call that echolalia. And, they should know that. But I'm wondering, as far as disclosure, I've always thought, maybe we lead with the label to explain those behaviors so that they can relax. Oh, okay, he's not.
Yes, that's absolutely right. But then there's other, we were talking yesterday about stems, and I used to do a stem of clicking pens. Well, if in an office, that'd be very annoying.
Right.
So I switched it to making elaborate doodles where I mark around letters and things like that on something. But that doesn't bother people.
Right. So it was a replacement behavior.
It's a So I made a replacement behavior that doesn't bother people.
Yeah. It's sometimes
another issue that's come up is hygiene because of and that's one of the things where some conformity is essential. There's a scene in the HBO movie where they slam the deodorant down, and that happened.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different products to use. I use solid stick. I can't even feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's problems with water running on them, where the water hurts, kind of burns.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a little bit of that, but if you I like to have control where, I turn the shower on, I stick my hand in there, get it just right. I hang the towel on the shower rod so I can wipe my eyes because I don't like the water in my eyes. Okay, those are simple things that I did to make that easier.
Did you learn that as you went, Temple? Did your mom help you with that? Did you have anybody else?
No, I had some people get pretty, employers get very blunt about that.
Right. Right.
And I was just talking about, autism and veterinary technicians and working in a vet clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying that the scrub suits itched. Well, there's a lot of different scrub suits on the market.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't like the UPS uniform when there's only one of them. And wash them several times.
Mm-hmm.
And find some that don't itch. And all clothing that goes against my skin is washed at least once before I wear it.
Okay. So
it goes against my skin.
So clothing is still an issue, a sensory issue for you. Okay.
Yes. And like I buy these pants at Walmart, and I have to wash them 3 times before they don't itch sitting on a long plane ride.
Right. Right.
I'm doing that right now. And then there's other pants I don't like because they itch. So we got to find things that go against the skin. But the first thing you do, and this job with the UPS uniform issue, this just was a few days ago. Well, did you try washing the uniform?
Mm-hmm.
Let's start out with the simple things to do.
Right.
Maybe they have a summer shirt, and you can wear the summer shirt in the wintertime.
Right.
So, Temple, this is Heather. And talking about the sensory issues, would you say from your experience then that, because it seems like in therapy and different things, the concept is, okay, we're going to get over this and, you're going to find a solution and move on. With a son that's 23, what you would tell us is what I feel like you're saying is that we need to adapt and constantly adapt. That you
have to do some adaptation, but you can't just wear sweatshirts sweatpants.
Because you're in your 70s and you still have to deal with this on a daily basis, it sounds like.
But I found clothes.
You found solutions. Yeah.
I found solutions. I take a shower every day.
Yeah.
Underwear is washed every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
These
sense.
are things that, you've got to do.
Yes, that continue to or appear in your life. Right. So is it the shower and the clothes? Are those your main sensory issues in life?
Now, the shower I'm okay on. It was mainly things that itch against my skin.
Okay.
Now, when I was a child, I remember when I was in college, I had these wool pants that were lined, but the seams itched. So Mother got the iron-on tape and ironed that onto the seams to cover up the wool.
Right.
Okay, that's just that wasn't that difficult to do.
Right.
And there's so many different kinds of clothes now today that are so much more comfortable.
Right.
That you can find something that's decent to wear.
That's what I was going to say, is that our options are so much better now than back then. I remember those wool pants.
There's so many options now.
Right.
But the hygiene, I was just talking to a lady, the manager of the veterinary clinic, and she said I had to have some very awkward conversations about hygiene, and the autistic person said they hated the scrub suits. Well, I said, did you try washing them first? I wouldn't wear a brand new scrub suit.
Right.
No way. I would wash it at least once before it got worn.
Right. I think Dawn had something to say. Dawn?
So correct me if I'm wrong in my assumption, Temple, but it's my understanding that you've said that if you could snap your fingers and your autism would be gone, you would not do it.
I would not do it.
Right. Okay.
I like the logical way, I think, and I can't believe all the stuff that's going on in the world is so illogical and bad.
Okay. Now, on the sensory issues that we've just discussed and the accommodations that you've had to have and the tough conversations that if you could snap your fingers and get rid of the sensory portion of your autism, would you do that? And then before I let you answer that question, how did your mother, would she have taken that when you were a 4-year-old child and she had
I had to wear these scratchy petticoats and I had children's undershirts, and I had to make sure the undershirt was tucked into the underpants.
Yes.
So that didn't go against my skin.
Yeah.
Well, the clothing today is so much easier. The sensory stuff for me today is just an annoyance.
Right, right. And let's talk about autism really quick and like blurting out. That seems to be a big issue. I know with my son, not keeping all his thoughts in his head, and being rude to customers sometimes.
All right, well, let's talk about rude to customers, because
Let's talk about that.
Did some rude stuff at work. On my job, I criticized some welding. I said it looked like pigeon doo-doo.
Yes, my son has made similar comments.
Well, the plant engineer pulled me into his office and he said, you have to apologize for that. He told me what I should do in a very straightforward, calm way. I just was talking to the mom, and her kid was having problems with talking about controversial subjects at work. I said, let's just say sex, religion, and politics, don't bring it to work.
Okay, right.
Period.
That's
The
good
rule.
for
Don't
everyone.
Bring it to work.
Right. I know that even
sports, that's just fine.
Sports, yes, that's true.
That's fine.
That's true. My husband has told my son to talk about sports. Like, just bring up Michael Jordan. If all else fails, bring up Michael Jordan or talk about him. But I know that noises and sensory issues. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, talk about how many thunderstorms we've had or something like that.
The weather.
Oh, the weather. Yes.
And I have pictures on my phone of like a really weird weather at the Denver airport.
Oh, do you?
How about a sideways tornado at the Denver airport?
Oh my goodness. Oh my.
It's a thing called a roller cloud.
Oh, roller cloud. Are you interested in weather? Is that one of your interests, or what other interests do you have outside of your?
It cancels and delays flights.
Oh.
When you have somewhere to be.
Yeah.
Yes. Then I'm looking at the weather. Let's talk about some of the sensory things.
Okay.
I worked with a lot of skilled tradespeople. They were very, very talented in their work, and they could deal with the noisy shop tools. Well, one of the ways to help get them to maybe tolerate electric drill or some other machine is for them to go down and turn it on themselves many, many times. Go down when the shop is empty and just get pieces of metal and wood and just drill holes in them. where you are turning the noisy thing on.
Right.
That often improves it. The other issue is people that wear headphones all the time. That makes sound sensitivity worse.
Mm-hmm.
What's important is control, where have them with you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're using noisy shop equipment, yeah, you can wear the ear protectors. That's what they're made for originally.
Right.
But in other situations, you can have them with you, so you've got control. You have them with you, and then you have to go in one of these bathrooms with these horrible hand dryers.
Yes.
You can put the headphones on, but don't wear them all the time because it makes it worse.
Right. Right. I know my son has the little, he never wore headphones because I don't know why I didn't get them, but he would cover, with his hands and everything. And now he still uses, the little earplugs that you can't see. Well, you can sometimes see them, they're just the little bitty
there was
ones.
an issue of a job the other day where an autistic lady was working in a restaurant, and the boss didn't want her wearing these big headphones. Well, how about get some small earplugs?
Right.
You see, but let's figure out how we can make some accommodations. Also, there's a tendency for some of the autism advocates to talk about accommodations in way too broad terms.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm finding I'd rather talk about the things that come up all the time.
Right.
Like meeting a checklist. Okay, problems with noise.
Right.
Problems with itchy clothes. Problems with hygiene. These issues come up all the time. So I'd rather talk about specific ways to fix some of these problems. I don't want to lose jobs over UPS uniforms or medical scrub suits.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think both of those can be solved by washing the clothes a bunch of times.
This is Tara. I was just going to say, it's what you said about just the control issue. My son does wear headphones when he needs to, but I have found as he grows up, he's 21, if I just have them in my purse and they're available, it does just release a lot of that.
Security.
Yeah, it just gives him some security. Yeah.
Well, no, let them have them with them.
Yeah, and sometimes
control.
he just doesn't want to carry them, but he knows that I have them with
But you have them.
Yeah.
But
that's so
you
true.
have them.
So when
the
he sees
fire alarm
it's usually children. It's usually children screaming, and that's when he has to use them. But his resistance is building every day. And he's actually very proud of himself. He says, "Mom, I didn't use my headphones today." So he sees the dependency on him and is trying to, get better about that.
That's good. That's good.
Well,
Yes.
then there's always going to be problems with the jobs that require a lot of multitasking. Processor speed's just too slow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so chaos at the takeout window at lunchtime, I'd rather avoid that job. But there's plenty of other jobs.
Right. It's just, I think they can get the jobs. It's just keeping them that seems to be the issue on both sides, I think, on both the employer and the employee. Sometimes it's hard to talk to someone on the spectrum to try and tell them to
the
adapt.
Hygiene thing, you see, I got to talk to a really stern way, and that was shown very clearly in HBO movie, Temple Grandin, and that happened.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I was upset about it, but that's one of the things where
You just have to
there's
learn.
got to be that's one of the things where you do have to do some conforming. Now, the kind of stuff that I'd have a real difficult time is really rapid chit-chat conversation. It goes by too fast for me to hear it and process it. I have problems with hearing in very noisy restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
What I tend to do in those situations is talk to the person beside me.
Okay.
I don't get involved in the whole table conversation because I can't follow it.
That makes sense. I just thinking with my own son, sometimes the rapid chit chat, and I've learned through just therapies and stuff, I'll ask him, now, what did I say? And he can't always repeat what I said, even though I gave him a direction. So I've tried to shorten it still, even at 32, shorten my words and shorten my directions. But that's a good
point. You see,
point.
one of the problems is that if I like to use electronic analogy, I have a slow processor speed. So if you know anything about computers, I'm an Intel 286 for a processor. That's the first computer circuit. But I've got warehouses full of computers for memory.
Oh, okay. True.
Because I talked to one person that ran an electronics store, and they loved their autistic employee because he memorized every part number in the warehouse.
Yes.
And didn't have to use the computer. They loved him.
Right. Yes. Sometimes they can stump you. I mean, I know that even at the museum, my son said something about a rare turkey that was somewhere in Africa, I think, and the other employee said, "I don't think that's true." And my son was actually right, because he will never forget all the animals and species across the world. So, yeah, there are pluses and minuses. Now, listen, he has told parents not to, that they don't really. They're not disciplining their children very well in the museum. That's been an issue, and he's had some complaints about that. But
well, the child's going to break something. You've got to stop that.
Well, that is very true. Yes, I think he actually called security one time. He told them not to touch the zebra or something, and they touched it anyway, and he called security because they broke a rule. And, they're very rule.
Well, you see, this is where I have different categories of rules.
Okay.
You don't, and I figured this out in high school. You have really bad things like murder, bank robbery, things like that. We don't do that. And then you have courtesy rules. They help people get along. And then you have illegal but not bad. Oh. Okay, maybe technically he's not supposed to touch the zebra. And the reason for the rule is if it's stuffed zebra, if everybody touches it, its hair will wear off.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you see, that would be when you explain, well, if everybody touches this, his fur will wear off. You can explain to the kid why you shouldn't touch it. That's an illegal but not bad.
Okay. I wrote that down. That's good.
And then you have the sins of the system. Now, let me tell you, with all the polarizations going on right now, that stuff's getting so controversial. I need to give them a new name now, the third rail. Don't touch it.
Right.
If you live in New York, you know what the third rail is.
Yeah.
You know what that is. It runs the subway cars. You touch it, you're dead.
Oh, okay.
It's the rail that an electric subway car picks up the electricity from. You have the tracks, and then there's another rail that a mechanism on the subway car rubs on it to pick up the electricity.
Okay, gotcha.
If you touch that, you're dead.
Right. Heather, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to, because for my son at 23, he does have a little job. He works in the garage for a company a couple hours a week. So being profound and not having any conversational speech.
What does he do in the garage?
He's putting together termite monitors for a pest control company that that we're part owner in. So the opportunities, for a person at his level, I guess, is difficult to obtain. So we just did it ourselves, which I think
something where it's useful work.
Right. Yeah, it has to be done.
Because you make them do busy work, they're going to have a behavioral. He knows that those termite monitors need to be put together.
Yes.
And they're useful things.
Yeah. And it took, I would say, 6 or 7 months really to get it, teach him the aspects that he didn't really need any hand over hand, help. And now he does it faster than any technician was doing it before. It's just that he has to do it in our garage right now, which is fine. That's fine. But I was going to ask you,
do it in your garage?
Well, because he can't really handle the office setting. There's not a good place for him to do the work right now. And so we're hoping that's our next goal, that we would move into the office setting and he could do those couple hours of work with all the other coworkers around and kind of get used to that environment. That's our next kind of goal that we're working on.
You gradually work into it.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you specifically when you were talking about memory, and I've read several of your books, the concept of thinking in pictures that you have spoken about.
Yes.
I'd really like to ask you a question, since my son can't tell me or explain anything and why he's doing it. Zachary is very in tune with pictures. He loves family pictures and things when he was small and as he was growing up. He collects pictures and also things from his early childhood. He absolutely loves, and he tells us in nonverbal ways that he wants them. And my question would be, could you give me just a little bit of insight from your experience, what that might be doing for him? Like, do you think that's taking him back to happy memories or just the familiarity of it?
Well, I think it's taking him back to happy memories.
Okay.
And then I've written in my books, Thinking in Pictures, also visual thinking.
Right.
That, some autistic people are picture thinkers. My memory is the best way to imagine them. It's like all the little pictures on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And you can search through them. And then you have the autistic person that's a pattern thinker, the more the mathematical and musical mind.
Okay.
And then you've got ones that are the history fact lovers. And they love facts.
Yeah.
And that would be the kind of person that would have been good at that auto supply store that memorized all parts.
Yeah. So I've had people say that, like, whether it's, family or friends or just passerbys, just thinking that, when they're so intently involved in something like, collecting pictures and stuff, that early on, when he was little, I feel like there was a lot of professionals that would say, let's keep him away from that. Let's get him into some age appropriate, whatever. And so I think we have through the years learned that while we have stretched him, as you said, to hopefully enjoy some other age appropriate things, we still feel like
okay, like in other words, Thomas the Tank Engine, that's
right.
for little kids.
Yes. Yeah, like Zachary loves the Wiggles, he loves VeggieTales. But our way of handling this as parents is in my opinion, I think it's disrespectful to try to take those things away from him. I feel like those things bring him joy. We just need to also open his eyes to other things.
Take him away. And, there was one autistic adult, probably medium, high level, and he liked Power Rangers. Yes. And he wanted to wear a Power Ranger on a lanyard around his neck. Kind of inappropriate. Well, you can put the Power Ranger on the backpack. It's fine to have it there.
Yeah.
Okay. You see, I'm just thinking of a way to. I'll look at when I go to the airport and I look at some of the stuff on backpacks, even on pilots and stuff. Yeah. Some of the stuff they have on backpacks.
Right.
Right.
Now, they'd never hang it around their neck, but they would be.
Yeah. So finding ways to make it more socially appropriate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
that's good advice.
The thing to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right. So what is your, are you working on anything now, Temple?
Well, I'm doing a lot of speeches, and then right now I'm revising and updating my livestock handling and transport book. I'm working on that right now. I've got one chapter author that got their chapter in late, and then they didn't do a very good job of updating it.
Oh, okay.
I've got to add a bunch of references to it.
Oh, there you go. And you said you were at the University of Colorado? Is that
No, Colorado State.
Colorado State for 34 years.
Don't mix up the.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Colorado State. I'll say it twice. Okay. So how is that going? What is your typical schedule there?
Well, I'm part-time there, so I have to be in on Monday or Tuesday to teach my class. Earlier in my career, I was out in the industry supervising construction projects. Now I'm kind of on the road, and I'll talk to vet students about animal behavior, animal science students, talk to them about animal behavior, doing a lot of talks on autism. Just a lot of the same things I'm talking about now, like how to deal with some of the sensory issues. Oh, while we're talking about sensory, you said some of you have nonverbal individuals.
Yes.
Some of those individuals can learn to type.
Okay.
And that needs to be encouraged, but I'm going to give you a little tip.
Please do.
It's very difficult for them to gaze shift. So if you have a laptop, for example, you have to look down at the key, and then you have to look up at the screen. They can't do that gaze shift. So that's why you need to be using things like tablets, where the print appears next to the virtual keyboard.
Okay, and that makes sense.
That's really, really important.
Zachary, who's 23, just got an AAC device, and we've been working, like when you said, take him into the store. And one thing that we're doing with his speech therapist is practicing, like going into Hobby Lobby and using the button to say, where is the Christmas decorations in Zachary's?
Yes. That's what he loves.
Whatever it is he's interested in, but using that to interact with employees that would give him some direction, like some of that back and forth that most people would think a nonverbal person would not have the ability to do.
Well, they're finding with some of the nonverbals, they've actually got a good brain trapped inside a body, where they have difficulty controlling movement. The visual system maybe have to be scrambling.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons why they smell and touch so much stuff
And pace a
is
lot.
those senses still work. They work.
Okay.
Accurately.
Yeah, Zachary smells everything.
Does he
Literally
smell?
everything.
Does
I
he?
just took it. He smells everything.
And they pace a lot, Temple. Like
and
a
he
lot
paces almost constantly.
Yes.
Well, the other thing is you have a good exercise program.
Yeah.
Another thing is really, really important.
That's been hard. I don't know if the rest of you have struggled with that, but
Yes.
it's hard. The exercise part has been hard. Zachary enjoys walking, but he doesn't organize sports and things like that. There's too much going on for him there.
Well, but how about just a exercise machine, going to the gym?
Yeah.
Yes. My son does work out at his gym at his apartment complex. And he
Good.
loves it. And he loves to do it at 3:30 every day. You know.
Well, and then it's also an activity where you get people you do it with that are also there. At 3:30.
Yeah, I've mentioned that. That didn't go over well, Temple. I did ask him if he wanted a personal trainer that I could have there because I thought, well, that would be good for him socially and physically. And he said, I'm not interested in that. I said, oh, okay. So sometimes my husband goes over with him and helps him, but I do think you're right. That would be a good
But then
good
I
next
talked to
step.
a lady that I think was higher up on the spectrum. She said I loved her gym membership and she has her exercise friends.
Okay, yes. I do know that he talks to a lot of the office staff. I didn't know that for many years. I think he probably talked to them too much sometimes, kept them from their work, but
But then what you have to learn is that you can talk to them for like 5 minutes.
yeah.
In other words, just put a few simple rules in.
Yeah, can I be honest about that? If I tell him 5 more minutes, I mean, well, 1 more minute. And it just keeps going and going.
And what does he talk to them about?
Well, I don't know what he talks to him about, but this is even with me too. I mean, he feels, I think that need for completion that I learned early on, like he has to finish his thought. He can't, it's very hard for him to stop in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, really hard for him to stop in the middle. We were yesterday in the car. I mean, I guess he might listen to this. I don't know. But I was like, oh my gosh, like the story just went on. And I've tried. I feel like that's one thing that I haven't really been successful at is trying to teach him to stop talking. And you can't talk to somebody for 20 minutes straight, telling a story. And do you have any advice for that?
Well, you kind of just have to learn some rules.
It's back
Like
to the rules.
when I went to college, one of my rules was no more than 2 questions per class.
Okay.
In other words, I had to get away from this carrying on a conversation with the professor.
Okay. So you could only do 2 questions per class.
And then you just make a rule. And then if I need to talk to the professor more, see him at office hours.
But you felt you had the need to talk to him a lot more though, right? You just had to limit yourself. Okay.
But I had to limit myself because the reason for that goes back to turn taking. I was taught turn taking as a very young child.
Yeah.
And other students have to have a chance to ask questions.
Right.
Temple, this is Dawn. On that, was that a self-imposed rule that you came up with, or was that imposed from an outside source? Only 2 questions per class. Was that a rule you placed on yourself?
I just kind of figured that out on my own.
Oh, that was good. I feel, back in the day when I read your books and would go see you when you appeared, and then Tony Atwood, I read his book, and I think he also talked about that, set the visual timer or tell him only 2 more questions. And so I tried to follow that, but that's a hard one for me still with him. Just knowing when to stop talking and the social skill.
Well, the turn taking thing. I used to, when I was in college, I used to stop by the post office copier room. And I kind of kept it down to about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Because one of the things I was taught really young, I used to like to go over to the neighbor's house when their teenage daughter would de-junk her room, and I'd get cool stuff. And I remember being told, don't wear out your welcome.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to space out the visits.
Yeah, that's a good one. My mom used to tell me that. Oh, Cynthia has a question for you.
Yeah, Eric is 30, and he went through high school, and we pulled him out middle school. So he was homeschooled 7th and 8th grade, then went back into high school in 9th grade. But during the homeschool years, we immersed him into volunteerism. And he volunteered in politics and then started volunteering at the Wonders of Wildlife. And then he also started his zoo volunteerism, which he has thousands of hours of volunteerism into both of those places. And so the animals are his thing. And even as much as I wanted to get away from it, it just,
Why would you want him to get away from it?
Well, because at the zoo when he was there, he got to do volunteerism. So when you volunteer, you work every single part of the zoo. But then during his senior year of high school, they let him come in and work in the petting zoo. And once he was in the petting zoo, they didn't let him go anywhere from there. And then he worked there for pay, like 3 days a week after high school. And he does have a 2-year degree, but he always felt like he was just unnoticed. And finally, he decided he was going to leave the zoo, which was a shock to me. He'd never even mentioned that I was going to try to find another job. And he found one at a vet office.
And so how's that working out at the vet office?
Well, he did it for 2 years, but he's not there anymore. It was kind of during COVID, and they had a new management, and they had new rules, and he hadn't read the handbook, and so he had taken off.
Changing bosses, that's always a dangerous time.
Right.
Yes, it was.
Dangerous time. I almost lost my job at the magazine when they changed bosses.
Yes.
Jim thought I was weird, and the lady who did the ad layout, who I'm pretty sure was autistic, said, this new boss doesn't like you. We're going to have to get a big scrapbook together of all your articles and show it to them.
Oh,
exactly.
There you go. That's
and
a good
then
idea.
I got a raise. I learned to sell.
I love that.
learned to sell my work and not myself.
That's awesome.
Oh,
and the first time he met you was at Drury College, and you met him, and you taught him after your speech that always to have a firm handshake to people and look them in the eye when you talk to them, and he really appreciated all that. And the first time I met you was in Kansas City with your mother, and you were there to speak with educators, and all of us moms were on the very front row. Just as soon as that we took a break, we were all just storming the stage to talk to your mom, and it was really good. And you were there as well. But now he is working as a para, and he is was going in for before school care at 6 a.m. and then a para from like 8 to 3. But he always keeps saying, I want to get back in the zoo. And he's interviewed for several jobs there when they've had job openings, and he never gets it. And I finally asked somebody once, and they said, well, there's always people that have a higher qualifications. But I don't know how do I get them to ever want to give him a chance again, because he's been there for so long. And I don't know if it's the interview process where he has a breakdown, or I don't know what it is.
What I find is you have to find the back doors into jobs.
Okay.
Where, in other words, he's probably getting interviewed by HR.
Right.
Well, he needs to get working with somebody in the animal department.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah. Be persistent, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And to make them employers to be able, are they willing to have the time to hire him and teach him, which I don't think would be that difficult because he's been his whole life there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So he'd have to sell his work, not himself, like you said, Temple.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Well, that's
I
how
like
I sold design jobs, is I simply would show people drawings and pictures.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
An interview for me was lay drawings out on the table and show them pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And you and I have some mutual friends in Bolivar, Jim and Sheila Hacker. I said to throw that in there. I grew up there, so they are wonderful friends of mine. So, and I know you think a lot of them, and they think a lot of you.
No, they're doing a lot of good things. And
Oh, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Temple.
so he was in the zoo
Mm-hmm.
and doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
You see, the changing of bosses, this is something that's come up over and over again. Real dangerous time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is, isn't it?
Temple,
Yes.
what is our role as mothers in that process? Because sometimes I feel like I'm overstepping my 21-year-old's, he's looking for jobs right now. And I'm like, well, let me help you write your resume. It's hard to get
I think
him.
that instead of helping him write the resume, just get him in the back door.
Yeah, it's really hard for him to take my advice because we've sort of switched over from, I'm still his parent, but he wants to do things on his own, but on his own, he doesn't have a lot of motivation. So I'm trying to figure out that, what my role is as a mother at age 21, advocating for him. Because he is very independent.
If you could just get him a really good job, you see, you might have the connections to get in the back door of a job that he wouldn't have.
Well, I did have to push him to apply for this college. And of course, we're paying for it. So I feel like that's advocating for him. But and he's not real excited about it. But it's a good program that teaches all these skills and they move him around.
this college campus in Springfield to different jobs every week, so he can get a little bit of exposure to different employment opportunities and stuff like that. But I'm just trying to figure out if I, at this point, so as an example, like I pushed him so far, like at his previous employment, I was like, you have to go to work. This is what you do.
Yeah.
And at some point he just sort of broke down, and just refused to go. And being a 21-year-old man, I can't physically, I cannot push him out the door. It's hard to figure out where my place is. Like, do I let him fail? Do I let him? And that's what happened last time. He had to actually have his voc rehab person walk in and not fire him, but quit because he couldn't do it on his own.
Well, what was the problem at the job?
Well, and I understand this, but voc rehab here sometimes puts these guys in roles so that they can fail almost. It's just not a perfect job.
I think some of the best jobs, you have a friend or somebody who gets them in the back door. Half of all good jobs are in the back door.
Mm-hmm. Well, it took us a year to get just this grocery job. And I feel like now with a different voc rehab person, I feel like he's really listening to what my son is saying. So I think this one's going to work out because they're finding jobs that he's interested in. But in the past, voc rehab just sort of puts him in where they have, availability. So this was at a grocery store and he did great until Christmas time. And then it was haywire for him.
Because of all the chaos.
Yeah, because it was chaotic. Yes. And he's not very good at advocating for himself. So he just pushed through and, he was a produce clerk and he just continued until he just couldn't go anymore. Of course they did say he could come back at any time, but by that point, he was done with that job. So
yes.
I don't think it was the greatest fit, but as a mom, so much stress trying to get him to go to that job every day.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if I was overstepping by.
Well, the zoo kind of stuff. Hopefully, see, the thing is, zoos are places where, management regimes change.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe with one regime, you can't work with them. But maybe they'll get a change in management and they could be approached again.
And they just did get a change in management. So
Yeah, they did.
They just did?
Yeah.
Yes, they did.
This is your
All
time,
right.
Cynthia.
Yeah.
All right, let's work on the back door.
Okay.
And do you know anybody at the zoo?
I do. I know a lot of people.
All right.
Yeah.
Use your connections.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Use your connections and walk straight in that back door.
Okay.
So what
Now, being a
if
visual thinker, I see the back door at our zoo in Denver when I used to go there, and you drive up this big gate and it would open. And it was in the back of the zoo.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you use your connections. They've just had a regime change. And what management got changed?
It's the head.
I think it's the zoo director.
The zoo director changed. Yes.
Oh, perfect.
Right.
Mhm.
And use your connections. Get him back in there.
Okay. Okay. We will.
See, this is appropriate for you to do.
Okay.
Because to get in the back door, you have to have connections.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Dimple, this is Kara. I have a question
Okay.
for you. This is as kids are growing up and aging, and we all know parents that, we all parent differently. And we did do a podcast on behaviors and consequences a few podcasts ago. And so my question is to you, there are parents out there, and we all know them, that they say, accept my child as they are. And that there are no consequences to their behaviors. And I think these parents are
ridiculous.
these parents are having a hard time.
Or their hygiene. Sometimes.
Or having a hard time knowing what sensory behavior or overload versus an actual learned behavior. What would you make
and that's something you need to
recommendations?
figure out.
Yeah.
A sensory overload might happen at a busy Walmart.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Problems with, but on the other hand, things like the hygiene, that's one of the things where they've got to clean it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a mother one time said that everyone should accept her daughter's dirty hair or something.
No.
Yeah.
And
That's part of her because of her autism.
Yeah.
No, there's now, on the other hand, problems with working memory and needing the checklist. The pilot's checklist is basically an external working memory.
Okay.
That accommodation is needed.
Yeah.
In college, maybe some extra time on tests.
Yep.
Because the processing speed is slower. That's an accommodation you need. Okay, washing the uniform before you wear it. But I don't, to lose a veterinary job over scrub suits when there's so many of them available.
Yes. Yes. It's just
You can
learning to
find
make
one that
those
doesn't
adaptations.
itch. And they have all kinds of cute ones too, with pets on them.
Right. Yeah, that's very cute. So was your mother involved as an adult? Because I feel like sometimes.
Well, she was involved. Okay, as a teenager, she got me into the ranch.
Yes.
She did that. She got me into a very good internship in college as an aide for an autistic kid. She did that. Now, when I got out on my own with my cattle stuff, I did that pretty much on my own. And the people that helped me were people like Jim the contractor. But there were people that in the construction industry that got off after me in a rather tough way about the hygiene.
Okay.
There's a scene in that movie where they slammed down the deodorant.
Yes, I remember that.
That happened.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That happened.
That was a
feel
good
like
movie.
I've done that.
Secretaries took me shopping.
I've done that with
happens
my
too.
son.
Yes.
And that happens too.
Yes.
No, there's a point where you've got to do some conforming.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be, something you're not.
Right.
But you cannot be a rude, filthy, dirty slob.
Yes. Thank you. That's
one
well said.
place where you do have to conform.
Right. Yeah.
Now, you want to wear pink hair and a nose piercing? Yeah, in a lot of places that's just fine, as long as it's clean pink hair.
And I think that goes
Yes.
back.
Right.
I mean, I think the hygiene part goes back to dignity too. And I just, as a parent, we're going to have to figure out how the lessons can be received.
Right.
For me, I just do it all myself because Zachary's unable. But I agree that puts them in a poor light when they're in the community, and it puts us as parents in a poor light as well.
Yes, I agree.
No, I remember when I was in college, we had a janitor that never bathed, and everybody was complaining about it.
It's definitely not a pleasant thing.
No.
No, and he was a janitor in the cafeteria.
Oh wow. Yeah. I know my
and
husband.
there were a lot of complaints.
My husband has used the term with our son, like there's options, and then sometimes things are not optional, and so being clean and showering is not a.
Now, different cleaning products and things.
Yes.
Like I didn't like the gunky roll-on deodorants they had in the 70s. Well, now I just use solid stick. You don't even feel it.
Right.
And get unscented products.
Right.
There's plenty of those.
Right.
I use Tide Free to get rid of all the things there's all the scented stuff. Tide Free is what I use to wash my clothes.
Okay. Shout out to Tide Free. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tide Free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's options.
You have the lots of options of products.
Well, I also
and you
find
should giving choices of picking out some of these products.
I find that my son cannot take a hint like my other kids. I just
you
tell
have to be direct.
I just
Very
tell him
direct.
straight out. I was like, you smell, you need to take a shower. And then he comes back after the shower and makes me sniff him because I seriously don't know if he knows he smells.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's true
Maybe
or
not.
not. I should ask him, but he has to have someone acknowledge that he doesn't smell anymore. Isn't that odd?
Yeah. Well,
But he needs to take a shower every day. And I've
Yes.
heard there's problems with it. Well, it feels like needles on their skin or something like that.
Yeah. He definitely does not like the water hitting him. So I understand that.
Well,
So-
then it's also baths is another option.
Yeah.
now, Temple, you have siblings, correct?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have relationships with them? Do you see them, or do you have family
Well, I'm
function?
in Colorado now, and they're all back east, so I
Okay.
see them at Christmas time.
You see them at Christmas time. Okay. How many siblings do you have?
I have a sister a year and a half younger, and then there's a big gap between my other brother and sister, 5 or 6 years.
And how are your relations with them? Most of us have only children actually sitting here, except for 3 of us. So,
Well, it was hard on my sister. One thing that mother kind of said, the other kids were the distance far enough apart, we were never in the same school. But it was hard for my younger sister, a year and a half younger, to have a weird older sister.
okay.
And sometimes she didn't get enough attention.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But you see them at Christmas time. You don't.
Oh yeah, I see them at Christmas.
You don't call them, or do they call and check on
I
you?
call them.
Oh, good. Good. So you're.
I talked to my sister just the other day.
Oh, good. Okay.
Well, we're going to have a sibling episode soon we have 3 moms that do have kids, including myself. I have an older daughter and younger son, and my son with autism is in the middle. And it was so good to have them in my son's life, because it was a way for they modeled good behavior and stuff like that. So he sort of went along with the crowd. But I do understand how, I know as a mom, I felt very guilty sometimes because I did have to pay a lot of attention to my middle son.
Yeah,
so,
and my mother had some similar feelings.
Yeah.
Well, in Temple, really quick, Kara may have already told you this, but the reason all of us mothers got together is all of our kids were adults, and some of us saw each other more than others, and we just decided to get together and say, hey, where are your kids now? They're all in their 20s. Late 20s, early 30s. What worked, what didn't work, where's your life at, what's going on? And so that's kind of how we got together, because Well,
no, I think that's really good. But what I'm seeing now with kids coming into the system,
yes,
is I'm seeing parents baby them so much that 16-year-olds have never gone shopping by themselves.
Yes,
I'm running into that over and over again.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing too. I've run across a couple old friends that I've seen, and their kids are not working or really doing much. And they said, well, it's just too loud and noisy for them to work anywhere. I'm like, what? What are they doing? I just don't think it's healthy physically and mentally to play video games or, do nothing really.
I know 5 or 6 video game addicts were gotten off of car mechanics. And they found that car mechanics was a lot more interesting than video games.
Oh, really? Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, visual thinkers are the ones that really get addicted to video games, and they're the ones that could be some of the best car mechanics.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
This is Dawn Temple. Are you aware of any video games that are effective in teaching social skills or even employment skills? I recently, with a coworker, because I'm a gossip and I talk about my son quite a bit at work, and her son recently discovered on Xbox a program, a game called something about lawnmower simulation. So in the game, they have to, lawn mowing business, they mow the lawn, they have to pay for, sharpening the blades on the lawnmower.
That might help teach some concepts.
Right.
But it's not going to replace getting out and doing it.
True.
Agreed.
Love that.
I love that.
It might be the intro, and then after, and then you've got to get out and do it.
Mm-hmm. Before we wrap things up here, when you're talking to educators right now, Temple, what are you teaching the educators? What are they telling you?
Talking about the life skills.
Okay.
The other thing is building up the strengths. Hearing horror stories with elementary school kids that are super good at math turn into behavior problem because they make them do the same baby math when they should be moving them ahead. Yes. There's not enough emphasis on building strengths. And then someone like me who's a visual thinker, all the algebra requirements now would screen me out. Mm-hmm. But we need our visual thinkers to fix things like elevators, which are not getting serviced.
Okay.
I end up keeping track of that.
Yeah.
Oh, do you?
Yes. I bet with all your travels and hotels you have to stay in.
I love that. Okay.
I've seen lots of expired inspection certificates.
Oh, yikes.
Lots of them.
Now I'm going to have to check every elevator I go
I'll
into.
Be doing that. I'll be taking the steps.
Well, because the people have retired out and they're not getting replaced. Because the kid who should be fixing the elevator is in the basement playing video games.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
And there's one in Springfield right now that was been fined for they hadn't had the elevators fixed and serviced, and there's a gentleman that's been upstairs in his room for 4 solid weeks because he couldn't get down.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. He almost started crying when he went outside because he hadn't had fresh air. Yeah. It's very sad. Okay. Is anything else you want to add?
Building.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I think we kind of get near the time.
Yes, we are.
I also tell employers, your mathematical minds, you wouldn't have this phone to talk on without the mathematical autistic minds, and you're not going to get your car fixed or get your elevators fixed without my kind of mind.
Right.
Yes, you're right, Temple. You're right. Yes, there's good jobs out there for autistic people. So
Well, and elevators mechanically are not going to change in any foreseeable future.
Right.
They may be computer operated, but they still are mechanical devices, and that is not changing anytime soon.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay, Elizabeth wants to say
And
something.
just one last thing. I'm so, Temple Grandin, I'm so glad you taught the words visual thinkers get addicted to videos. I think that's
Yes.
going to give a lot of guidance. So I'm
Yes.
calling out to our listeners to rewind whatever listened to when you said that, because that's one of the biggest struggles. But you put that in a completely different perspective. And instead of feeling frustrated that we have a child addicted, I think that gives us hope. Because all of a sudden we're
Well,
viewing
let's
our
replace-
people.
These have been successful,
Yeah.
and I've talked and I've run into them in different places around the country, and I've talked to several of them, and they said the motors are more interesting than the video games.
Yeah.
And what you need to do is find a mechanic willing to work with them, and you might just get them started out doing the simple things, and then gradually get them doing more and more things, and that's been very successful. One of them now fixes trains for the railroad.
I love
Oh,
it.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that.
That's
That's good
I think
advice.
that's my biggest takeaway from what you, plus the different
Plus
categories.
the
I
pilots
love
list.
that, the pilots list. But that's
The
a big
pilot's
takeaway
list
for
is
me.
really, really important. That will save a lot of jobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
You know what, Temple, I want to, you are amazing. Each one of us have learned so much from you in the past.
Mhm.
You know, as our kids are growing up, we've taken a lot of input from you and have used that towards our children to be more independent and happy.
Yes.
And so I want to thank you so much
Yes.
Thank you
for helping all of us.
You are so instrumental in our lives, for sure.
Well, it's been great to talk to you, and I hope I've given you some things practical stuff you can take out and use.
Yes.
Oh, you have. You've been just phenomenal. Thank you for all you do for all the
Okay,
autistic kids
wonderful
and
to
the
talk
parents.
to
Wonderful
Thank
talking to
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Temple.
Grandin. We love you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for listening to our podcast of Temple Grandin. It was great to have her as a guest. How lucky are we? So thank you so much. Hopefully she'll be back. So Tara, do you want to tell people where they can find us?
Yeah, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, and on our website, navigatingadultautism.com. We also have a Facebook, Instagram page, Navigating Adult Autism Podcast. You can also contact us through our Facebook page or at our email, moms@navigatingadultautism.com.
Great. Thank you. And welcome to season 2. Bye, everybody.
Yay!
Bye.
Thank you.